Mr Archie, I think you can go first.
I act for Bishop Manning. I just have a few questions to ask you. I think you just said before the break that Bishop Bede Heather knew you well. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. So, and you know from looking at the documents and other material that at some stage Farrell was in the Parramatta Diocese?
That's correct.
So that if at any time Bishop Heather had some concern about Farrell's presence in his diocese, that was a matter he could have brought to your attention, correct?
Yes, but he didn't.
I understand. Just asking that he would have been aware of your involvement in the Special Issues Committee, correct?
Correct.
And so if he had any concern whilst Farrell was in his diocese, that was something he could have brought to your attention, correct?
I believe he would have, yes.
All right. Now, can I just ask you this about Mr Brzezinski? He was a man that the church had referred people to as a specialist psychologist dealing in sexual deviation, correct?
Just two clarifications. One is I did more of the referrals to Dr Brzezinski, and it was my recommendation that people see him. I'm not sure that anyone else in the country used him much. The second point is that his expertise was in addictive behaviours and that sort of area.
He was part of this, the church setting up or being aware of a program being set up at St John of God dealing with sexual deviation, correct?
That's correct.
Right. So his focus was on sexual psychology and its interaction with sexual deviation, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Now, you gave some evidence yesterday suggesting that the referral to Brzezinski was somehow inconsistent with what was said at the 3 September 1992 meeting. Do you recall that?
I'm sorry.
Okay. Yesterday you seemed to suggest, and I'm not sure how far you wanted to make the suggestion, that somehow the 5-point plan that referred to a referral to Brzezinski was somehow inconsistent with what was said at the 3 September 1992 meeting, or what's suggested was said at that meeting.
Your Honour, I object at this stage. These questions were asked about at some length, particularly in relation to this meeting, and I'm just not sure what my friend's interest is in this question, and particularly in circumstances where she's unable to get instructions, as I understand it, from her client.
What do you say?
Well, it was suggested by both this witness and another witness that somehow the reference to Brzezinski in the 5-point plan was somehow inconsistent with what is asserted about what was said at the meetings, or that somehow that reflected on Bishop Manning's response to that letter, and that's really all it goes to. It's not a matter of...
I'll let you ask the question.
I don't think that was my intent to reflect anything on Bishop Manning.
No, so you don't seem to suggest anything against Bishop Manning's receipt of a recommendation that Farrell go to Brzezinski following the 3 September 1992 meeting.
No.
Right?
I don't think I said that, or if I did, I didn't intend it to be interpreted that way.
And you don't seek to assert that the recommendation in the 5-point plan about Farrell seeing Brzezinski means anything about what did actually happen at the 3 September 1992 meeting?
I can tell you what I thought. I thought that man needed help. Mm-hmm. And I thought if he saw a really top professional psychologist or psychiatrist, then maybe Farrell would get help. That's all I meant.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, the only other thing is this. In relation to Bishop Manning's referral of Farrell to the Special Issues Resources Group, I'm going to ask you some questions about that. Yes?
Sorry, what's the last thing? Sorry.
I'm asking you some questions about Manning's referral of Farrell to the Special Issues Resources Group.
Yes.
Now, given that the Diocese of Armidale had been seeking your counsel in relation to Farrell from mid-1990. You accept that, don't you?
Yes.
And
I think I was the one that recommended that. It was after they sent him to see one psychologist. Then they weren't quite content with the report on that, or someone wasn't.
yes,
They asked me to interview, and then I recommended Dr. Blazinski.
yes. And you called Dr. Blazinski to discuss the possibility of Farrell seeing him. Do you recall that?
I did what? I'm sorry.
Called Dr. Blazinski to
I think
discuss
I
the
did, yes.
suitability
Yes.
of Farrell seeing him, yes?
Yes, yes.
And given those communications with then Monsignor Peters, and then in April 1992, Bishop Manning contacts Lucas in relation to matters involving Farrell, yes?
Yes, I was not aware of that, but I believe that's the case.
Right. So in those circumstances, can I say this, when you were called to go to that meeting with Farrell and Lucas, yes?
Yes.
You're well aware of why Bishop Manning had sought the intervention of the Special Issues Resources Group to deal with problems arising from Farrell and his ongoing place in the priesthood.
Well aware. Look, Bishop Manning didn't speak to me personally prior to that meeting. Brian Lucas rang me a couple of days before the meeting, or maybe it was a day before, and said, would you come to this meeting? Bishop Manning wants advice in relation to Farrell.
Right.
But I mean, what Brian could tell you more, I think.
Yeah. Of his...
Conversation
Yeah.
with Bishop Manning.
And you had conversations with Lucas about
That's
why
right.
you were going to
That's
them.
correct. That's
Right.
correct.
Because you're both members of the committee at the time,
That's correct.
and you were being asked to deal with a problem
Yeah,
that you were part of this specialist group to deal with.
That's correct.
Right, there's my question.
Does anyone apart from Mr. Duggan have any questions?
Not yet.
Well, now's your chance.
No.
No. Mr. Duggan.
Thank you, Your Honour. Firstly, can I deal with Exhibit 4410, Your Honour, which was the one-page letter? My understanding and my instructions are that the second page or subsequent pages cannot be located, and there's only one page that we are aware of. And Monsignor, my name is Duggan, as you know, and
Mr. Duggan, I'm having a bit difficulty hearing you, sorry.
is that better, Monsignor?
Yes, thanks.
As you know, my name is Duggan, and I, with Mr. Rushton, appeared for you in this inquiry. Do you understand that?
I do.
I want to ask you first about the letter, which is Exhibit 4410, which you may still have in front of you. It's the letter dated 20 April 1994.
Yes.
And you asked some questions about that, and you referred to a Father McGuckin. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Who was he in 1994? What was his role in the church?
1994, he would have been working in the marriage tribunal in the Diocese of Parramatta. At some stage, he became the Vicar General. I'm not sure whether it was before or after 1994, I'm sorry.
But he could have been the Vicar General of the Diocese of Parramatta at the time of this letter.
It could have been, yes.
But
In any event, he had a senior role
yes,
in the Diocese of Parramatta.
I understand. Do you have a bundle of documents in front of you, a folder, documents to be tendered on your behalf?
I'm sorry, which ones?
If a folder can be provided to you.
Oh, right, sure.
And that has some numbered tabs in it.
Yes,
Can I take you to tab 5, please?
yes,
Now, that appears to be a speech, sexual exploitation, a paradoxical triangle, and it refers at the bottom, address given to psychiatrists and medical practitioners, 25 October 1992. Do you see that?
I do.
And is that a speech you gave on that occasion?
Yes.
I tender that document.
Well, are you seeking to have all of these documents come into evidence?
I am. I'm happy to tender them.
Why not? Unless Ms. Finesse has no problem.
Your Honour, the last document is the document that I've already tendered.
Yeah.
So perhaps tabs 1 to 4 or 5.
1 to 5.
1 to 5.
Tendered.
Make them together, Exhibit 4411.
Thank you, Your Honour. Monsignor, there's also another speech behind tab 4. Do you see that?
Yes,
It's titled Violence and the Church, It's Time to Talk.
yes,
And is that an address you gave?
yes, in Brisbane.
And who did you give it to?
To parish priests and pastoral associates. Pastoral associates are people who work in parishes and mainly do pastoral care with people in the parish, yes.
And you recall giving this speech in October 1992.
Yes,
Now, these two speeches that I've taken you to, did you give other similar type speeches to other groups at various times
yes,
in 1992 and afterwards?
yes. More afterwards than before.
Or afterwards than...
Yeah.
So these were early speeches of that type
That's right,
within and outside the church.
that's right.
I just want to take you to a quite different topic now. Behind tab 1, that's your passport or an extract from it.
Mr. Duggan, that photo doesn't look like me now, but it is me back then.
Thank you. And I won't take you through the various stamps, but if you can assume from me that it has you departing Australia on the 13th of July 1992 and returning on 27 August 1992. Does that coincide with your memory?
It does.
And I think yesterday you gave some evidence that you had a holiday and then you were in Chicago looking at Catholic charities.
That's correct.
And that was that trip that's stamped in the passport. Thank you. And if I can take you to tab 3.
Yes,
A few pages in, sorry, these pages aren't numbered, but it's the 3rd of September 1992.
yes,
Do you have that entry?
yes,
And at 7:30 there's an appointment. Is that your handwriting after the 7:30?
yes.
And what does it say?
It says Brian Lucas.
Thank you. And I should ask you, this is...
Well, it doesn't quite say that, but I can, in a cryptic fashion, I know that's what it says. If you know what I mean. It's a bit scrawled.
It is a bit scrawled, but that's your handwriting.
That's my
saying
handwriting,
Brian
and that's what
Lucas.
it says, yes.
And is this your diary or planner from 1992?
Yes,
And as I understand it, there were 2 diaries or planners kept, one that your secretary made entries into and one that you did. Is that right?
as I had a diary and she had a diary. And then my secretary at the time, I'd give her my diary and she would try and put them together.
Yes. These are in the days before electronic diaries where you can use the one.
As far as I knew they were, yes.
Can I take you to tab 2? There's some handwriting there that you may recognise. Is that also an extract from one of your diaries from 1992?
That's correct.
And in fact, the first entry has 13 July departing Australia. Do you see that?
That's correct.
Now, if I can just take you to about 3 pages in, to the 1st of September. Do you see that?
That's correct.
And is that your handwriting?
That is.
What does the first line say?
Return to work.
So does that accord with your memory that you had a working holiday for about 7 weeks? You came back to Australia on about the 27th of August, and then on the 1st of September you returned to work. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what the diary says too, yeah.
If I can take you to another topic now, I want to move to a different period, 2012, about the time of the Four Corners episode. Now, in terms of receiving emails, do you recall whether you had remote access to emails at that time? And by remote, I mean, could you view your emails at home or on a smartphone or anything like that?
No, my emails were all available to me at that time in my office in the city.
And did you usually view emails on the screen?
Yes. I'm sorry. Look, I was not very good at emails. My secretary, before I came into work in the morning, she would, unfortunately, she would print off emails for me and present them to me, and I would write on the email itself often what reply I might like to be sent, but I didn't download or send emails myself. I mean, it was just I was too busy, or maybe didn't know how. I'm not sure.
And would you sometimes put your initials on an email that had been printed out?
Yes.
Can I ask you about the Friday night before Four Corners episode in 2012? You recall you gave some evidence about that yesterday.
Yes.
And you also gave some evidence about a conversation with Wayne Peters that evening.
Yes.
And a question was asked when he mentioned the letter, why you didn't ask him to fax it to you or email it to you. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Do you recall, your evidence was that you were out to dinner on that Friday night. Do you recall where you were?
I do.
And where was that?
It was at the Concord West Hotel.
Thank you. Apologies, Your Honour. I have no further questions. Thank you, Monsignor.
Thank you. Father, this is, as it were, a side wind, but I just want to ask you a couple of questions about your speeches. You made them in 1992, the ones we've got here.
Yes.
They were very confronting speeches that you made.
Yes, Your Honour.
And confronting, I assume, to many of your colleagues in terms of publicly recognising sexual abuse by priests.
Yes, Your Honour.
What provoked you to make those speeches in that confronting way?
What provoked me
Why did you do it?
is what I believed.
I understand that, but
There was
was there a need?
no provocation. I mean, I think certain groups within the church and outside the church knew the sorts of things I was saying, both privately and publicly, and they would invite me to come and talk to them.
But why did you see the need to express yourself in such a confronting way?
Oh, well,
What motivated you to do this?
I felt at the time that we were trying to move forward the understanding of church leaders about the issues associated with everything this Royal Commission is dealing with, and the process of bishops' committees and special committees and protocols, in my opinion, was moving too slowly. So I was much more of a mover and shaker back then, or something, than I am now at my age.
Well, but should we understand that you became concerned that the church wasn't responding as it should be, and felt the need to
certainly not as quickly enough, Your Honour,
and felt the need to publicly confront the church?
Yes, I think that's correct.
Did you have any effect?
The effect was slow, but yes, I did.
How was that effect demonstrated?
Well, I think there's been a number of significant steps, but I think the most significant was when Bishop Jeff Robinson came to appreciate what needed to be done. He understood and began to, like I attribute towards healing, that document, especially its first version, to him, and other documents like Integrity and Ministry to him. And he because he was a bishop, he was able to achieve much more than I ever could, and that was an important moment in the process.
So persuading Bishop Robinson was
I wouldn't say I persuaded him, but he's intelligent enough to hear what I was saying. A very intelligent man, yeah.
The impression we have, tell me if this is right, is that you and those of like mind with you were not necessarily embraced by the mainstream of the church.
There would have been parts of the church that, look, I'm not aware of who was not happy with what I was saying or who was happy. I just proceeded ahead.
And Bishop Robinson hasn't, as we understand it, always been seen or embraced by the entire church either, is that right?
That's correct.
But
I am
sorry?
I am an admirer of Bishop Robinson, and especially his courage back in those years, especially in the mid 90s.
Well, I can understand what you say, but why did it take courage?
Well, I know for one that Bishop Robinson was very concerned that the officials in Rome were not responding adequately, and for a bishop to stand and criticise Rome was a very brave thing to do.
And how does the church in your, I know you're in a different role now, but how does the church in your opinion shape up today?
Well, of course, much better, but it's still, as you would have discovered during the course of this Royal Commission, it varies from place to place. I would be a bit biased in saying that I think the Archdiocese of Sydney is probably a leader in the way they handle these matters, but I'm not sure about that. And I'm not saying that's adequate either. I'm saying there's a lot more work to be done.
Can you help me with the areas in which work, as you said, needs to be done? What are the problems that remain, as you said?
Well, I still think that I always think of it this way. There are in any matter where the church has got a problem, there are three parties involved. There is the institution, in our case it's the church, but it may well be the legal profession or the medical profession, but there's the institution, there's the person against where there's a complaint about the person doing something wrong, and then there's the victims of that complaint. In most institutions, there's a tendency to keep the institution at the forefront, to protect the institution. And so if you call them the victim and the perpetrator of anything that's going wrong, come second, generally the victim last. And I think we're getting better at it. But there needs to be more attention given to people who have been hurt by the institution, rather than trying to excuse the institution for the hurt, if that makes sense.
We were the sentiment that one shouldn't look at the past but now look at the future was expressed to the Commission, you may know, a couple of weeks ago from within the Catholic Church. Do you hold the view that you shouldn't look at the past?
Of course not. The only way we can learn is by learning about the mistakes of the past,
Now,
and then improve on them.
Now, is your view one that you would think is shared by most of the church leaders or not?
Oh, look, Your Honour, I don't know. I don't know what most church leaders think or don't think. I know some bishops who would agree with me, but I don't talk to the bishops much anymore. No.
Yes. Does anyone have any questions from those matters? Ms. Finnis?
Thank you. I have no further questions of the witness, Your Honour.
Thank you, Father Usher. That concludes your evidence and you're excused.
Thank you, Your Honour. Thank you, Ms. Finnis.
Thank you, Your Honour.
You may leave the witness box. You may step down. Where do we go from here?
Your Honour, there are further inquiries that those assisting the Royal Commission wish to make in relation to the matters that have been heard over the last 2 weeks, so I'm not seeking that a direction be made in relation to submissions at this stage, and I'm submitting that the hearing be adjourned to a date to be fixed, and all those with an interest will be informed of that date once it has been settled upon.
Very well. We'll take that course and we'll now adjourn.
Thank you.